She brightens everyone's day with a little Southern style. You'll meet her coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Myrtle Beach Herald, Myrtle Beach's oldest locally owned newspaper, at its offices at Myrtle Square Mall. And we're visiting with Diane DeVaughn Stokes, the host of Southern Style on Time Warner Cable and a PD native that now calls the Grand Strand home. Good morning, Diane.
I am honored to come back.
Get down. How exciting. I think it was back in March, I think we were here, taping at the offices, focused, of course, on the Carousel on Horses, Carousel Horses on Parade,
Absolutely.
and Harry Love and Diane Moscow McKenzie were in here. And then I think in April we were at Horry Georgetown Tech at the Elizabeth Chapin Library there. Amazing.
3 times a charm.
Yes.
And I am honored to be invited back.
Oh, Diane, this is really special.
And you're doing great, because, you know, as I told you before, I hate being interviewed. I'd rather do the interviewing. So, but you just made it so pleasurable, and you slipped me a tranquilizer, and so I'm fine.
Yeah,
no,
that's right. Drugs work. Oh, no, shh, we're at the Herald.
Thanks for inviting me back.
It's, you know, so exciting to think, as I looked on your bio, and I hate to even say had to look at your bio, but to go back, when did Diane start in broadcasting? And to think it was 1973. I hate to put a date on that because
30
you look
years. Am I well preserved?
You look like my sister, Diane.
Oh,
My
no.
God, I mean, think of that.
Do you know what? It has been 30 years, but it's been 30 wonderful years. And even though my entire career, except for commercials outside of the market, my entire television career and radio career has been here in this market, it's been an incredible run because I've worked for a lot of wonderful people and made a lot of wonderful friends. And I'm here where my family is. My parents live in Florence, and so to me it's just so important to be close to family and friends. It wasn't important to me to ever move to a big city and get out of the market.
Diane, where was your first radio gig?
My first radio gig was in Florence at WOLS Radio, which is slow spelled backwards. And I don't know whether you know this, but that radio station many years ago received fame because it was owned by Melvin Purvis, who shot John Dillinger. And, of course, that was before I worked there. And I went to work there doing the holiday show with Doug Williams out of Florence, who, as you know, is one of my dearest friends and mentors. And that really kind of got my career started. Right out of Francis Marion College, I went to work at WLS Radio. I was also a editor with a local tourism newspaper at the time. And once the newspaper magazine kind of folded, I went to work for the Holiday Inns in Florence. I was director of sales for them, in addition to doing the radio show. And then, of course, Doug dragged me, screaming and kicking, to the television stations, where I started doing television commercials at WBTW, which was the only television station in the market at the time. And that's where I got my break into television commercials.
Now, the radio was live.
Absolutely. And that was the best education I could have had. Frankly, we would ask people to come down and join us for the hour and a half, but we would interview people in the dining room at the Holiday Inn. We would be on the air saying, hey, we don't have anybody sitting in the hot seat. Come on down. And people would leave their homes and literally come down to the Holiday Inn downtown dining room to join us. Live was the very best way to learn television. It was just incredible.
That must have been amazing. So your co-host was Doug Williams.
Right.
And he also had a relationship already with TV13.
Absolutely. And he had been at the radio station for a long time. I mean, Doug was the man, and he was the golden voice of broadcasting out of the PD area for many, many moons. And Doug still lives in Florence. He doesn't do much radio. Occasionally he pops up and does a television commercial or two. But he took me out and showed me how to record audio, took me into the little booth and showed me how to record those tapes. You know, we used to get like $5 for voiceovers, and it was a long haul out to TV13 many years ago just to do a radio commercial. But it was certainly a great way to build your repertoire.
Absolutely. And Doug's such a superstar still in the PD. And, of course, he hosted a show on WEYB when Ed Young owned it.
Absolutely.
And then later was there when I had the station. Of course, had done so much and remains there in the PD area. And I've been trying to get him in Carolina People. He, like you, probably enjoys the hosting aspect and the interviewing aspect, and it's probably difficult to focus on himself.
But I bet together you and I could con him into it, and we could do a show together sometime. I would love to get Doug in here and talk about his career, because he truly has been loved and admired by so many people throughout the PD for years. The folks of the Grand Strand aren't as familiar with him, but certainly the people in the PD are.
Yes. And speaking of the PD, Diane, you said you went to Francis Marion.
Absolutely.
What did you study?
I actually majored in journalism my first 2 years, because Francis Marion became a college from the University of South Carolina at Florence, and I was majoring in journalism. And then, of course, once Francis Marion became a full 4-year institution, they dropped the journalism major because there were only 9 of us there majoring in journalism, and certain majors had to be cut. So that particular summer, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to switch and go to the University of South Carolina. And I went up there on my spring break and stayed with a friend, and I literally hated it. I thought, oh my goodness, I can't be in a class of 300 kids taking a sociology class or an English class with 400 kids and just sign in and be a name and a number. At Francis Marion at the time, everyone knew everyone, and all the professors were our friends, and it was an incredible school. And if you needed extra help, they were there to give it to you. And so I really liked being a big fish in this little pond rather than a little fish in this big pond. And Francis Marion stayed with me, of course, and I stayed with it and never left. I switched to an English major and majored in English and minored in sociology.
And you started at OLS virtually right out of college.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I started doing the holiday show with Doug right out of college, because I had met Doug while I was in college, and he said to me, when you graduate, you need to come to work for me. And I did. I went and co-hosted the radio show with him, and it was absolutely wonderful. So doing live radio with Doug, who was the best teacher of all, was truly a blessing for me.
Oh yeah. Diane, do you get back to Francis Marion at all for reunions or?
Yes, I do go back for reunions. As a matter of fact, when they had their 25th anniversary celebration, they called me and asked me to be the historian. Now, please keep in mind, I was not the oldest student at Francis Marion, but, I was in the second graduating class at Francis Marion, and that really made me feel quite ancient, but I had fun, and I went back and I told stories to the new students out there about some of the things that we did and the way it was back then, and how we play football on the front lawn of the school. We had flag football, and some things that, of course, they couldn't even believe we did. One of the most unique things about going to Francis Marion was that some of our classes, Greg, at that time were held at the old Wallace Gregg Grammar School. Now, you can imagine going to classes at the Wallace Gregg Grammar School, and the toilets were only like maybe 2 feet off the ground because they were made for little children. I still have incredible thighs from squatting over those toilets, but it was really quite fun to go to class there, and the desks were smaller. Actually, they did get us some bigger desks after a while, but the toilets remained small, and it really was quite humorous to go into a bathroom and have to use a facility that used to be for little children.
Oh yeah, how exciting, having been right at the fledgling stage of when Francis Marion was breaking off and really making it itself a standalone there, and obviously they had to work with anything they had. Talking about being in an elementary school,
it was incredible. I make jokes that I was Miss Francis Marion in '73, and we had to pass our crown down because there wasn't a budget for a new crown every year, so we had to keep passing our crown down. Now the Miss Francis Marions get to keep their crown, so a lot has changed. But some of the neat things when I go back to Francis Marion for homecoming, I reminisce because I know all the people those buildings are named after, and all the streets are named after professors that many of them are still living, but some of them have certainly moved on to heaven, and it's just an unbelievable feeling to go back there and know that I was a part of such a great institution. Greg, going to Francis Marion too, we as students at that time had the opportunity to decide what the school colors were going to be, what our mascot was going to be, what the ring was going to look like, what the yearbook was going to look like. There are educational things that I would have never had an opportunity to wander into had I gone to USC, which was already a well-established school. So I feel like an education was enlightened to me in a whole different way by remaining at Francis Marion.
Absolutely. Were you involved, Diane, in any theater groups at Francis Marion, or maybe in high school growing up? Of course, the Florence Little Theater has been around so long. And, of course, I was going to open this interview focused on Lucy, having seen you on November 2nd, about 2.5 weeks ago, at the FBC concert series, which was unbelievable. You were incredible.
Doing excerpts from Charlie Brown,
That's
yes,
right,
one of my
that's
favorite
right.
shows. But you know, back when I was a kid, I really didn't get a chance to do a whole lot of theater. However, at Francis Marion, we did have a very active English class that went and did plays for the student body. We didn't have a theater program at that time at Francis Marion. It was still very new and fledging at the time, and so, but we did have a very active English program doing theater, and I remember we did a play by Edward Albee for the whole student body, and yes, I was Mommy in that particular show, and it was a fun role, and it was really the beginning of theater at Francis Marion.
When you think about that age, being 21, 22, coming out of school, or even while you're wrapping up your education, getting on air, and knowing that you're on live radio every morning, or weekday mornings, or however that was set up, for an hour and a half, even as a understudy for Doug Williams, still you were on every morning. What enabled you? What gave you that sense that I can do this?
I guess I've always been a ham. Even my own mother says to me, I don't know where you got this from. She as much as my mother's the life of every party, she always says to me, Diane, getting up in front of a microphone and live, I don't know how you do this.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, that never bothered me. As a matter of fact, while I was at high school and at Francis Marion, I always seemed to be like the spokesperson for the school or the spokesperson for the class. Many times I was interviewed by the only local station at the time, which was WBTW, as to what it was like being a student at Francis Marion. Whenever we'd have activities, I'd be the person who would go and report to the TV station as well as the radio. And that's how I met Doug Williams. I got a chance to go on the holiday show as a student in high school and college and talk a little bit about activities going on, and I was never intimidated about doing that. It's kind of a weird feeling, but it's like being on stage and feeling the audience and feeling that affection, and for some reason it's contagious, isn't it? Aren't you getting used to it? Don't you love it?
It's very exciting, absolutely.
I mean, when you started it, weren't you nervous, and now don't you love it?
Sure, absolutely. There was a great, Larry King had something about how to communicate with anyone. He talks about his first times on air, and particularly that absolute first time on air where he was in pure silence for 45 seconds because he just couldn't speak. And I'm sure live is considerably different than tape delay. I mean, oftentimes taping something in advance and feeling a little more comfortable. Of course, I don't know how to say it. It just must have been difficult at age 21 or 22.
One of the most difficult parts of live television came when I was actually doing WPDE's talk show, PD
Yes.
People. I went to work for them in '81. When WPDE first went on the air, I hosted and produced their talk show. And one of the neatest things was that we opened the phone lines. And these phone lines would give us an opportunity to listen to the questions from the viewers and then answer the questions. Well, needless to say, we had a lot of wonderful feedback, but occasionally there were obscene phone calls, and you had to handle it. At local television stations in our market, there certainly aren't expensive delay systems, so you just did your best to ignore it and go on to the next call or make some sort of comment and move on. And so there was no doubt that even that experience of dealing with live phone calls and never knowing what the caller was going to say, whether they were going to be legit or not, was always a tough call, but that was also a good way to sink your teeth into broadcasting.
I'm sitting here right now, and reflecting back, even back to Francis Marion up to the present, Diane, and I think of 5 instances of you being involved in a startup operation, really being in there when you think about helping Francis Marion break away in that startup aspect, helping WPD really grow, having already been known in the market for 7 or 8 years at WBTW and WOLS. You and your husband starting Stages Video in 1989, and obviously kicking off Southern Style in 84, 85 for Cox, now Time Warner. And then recently, to think we were back here 7 or 8 months ago kicking off the Carousel Horses on Parade.
I love beginnings.
In so many amazing startups.
I hate endings.
And all of them have been so successful. And, of course, Stages goes on so strong. You're now about to celebrate 2 decades of Southern Style. I mean, come on. And Carousel Horses on Parade were a huge success. I mean, think about all that, Diane. It's amazing.
Well, I do like beginnings. I haven't always been involved with things that were incredibly successul.
Ooh,
I used to make.
Into that.
Oh no! But I mean, I've always been involved with beginnings for some reason, and I love to see things continue. But no, I was going to make a joke because I was a cheerleader at Francis Marion, and we rarely got a chance to say we're number one because we just didn't have we had a good basketball team, but we never had had like an incredibly winning season. But now when I hear Francis Marion winning all their games, I go, hooray, it's finally happened.
Oh, absolutely. Golly. Well, let's segue to leaving the PD and moving down to the beach. What year was that, Diane?
Chuck and I moved here in 1984, right after we got married. We had both been at WPDE, and the talk show had been canceled. They really were encouraging me to move into news. I didn't want to move into news. And so Chuck and I said, this is a perfect opportunity to move to Myrtle Beach, a place that we'd always wanted to live. When we first started dating, we used to make jokes about, we got to move to Myrtle Beach. We have to figure out how to move to Myrtle Beach. So once the talk show was canceled, we saw the opportunity to do that. We moved here the week after our honeymoon, and it has just been such a blessing. Doors have opened up to us. Chuck went to work about 3 months after moving to Myrtle Beach to open Channel 13's studio. He hung their first lights, opened the first doors. I did a real estate show for Channel 13, also a Grand Strand Gazette Sunday morning format show. It was kind of a talk show format that aired every morning after Charles Kuralt on Sunday.
Wow.
And we both were very lucky that doors opened up to us after we moved to the beach. Cox Cable hired me to do Southern Style, which of course is now Time Warner Cable, and the rest is history. But we did see an opportunity to start our own business back in, 1989, because we both saw the fact that if we were both working for TV stations, every time new management would come in, maybe we wouldn't have a job. Those things happen all the time. And we just knew we both didn't need to put all of our eggs in the same basket. And it's been a wonderful move for us. It's still just the two of us. I do the script writing and the marketing and working with the clients up front, and Chuck does the shooting and editing. So we're a good team. We like to say that at least when you hire Stages Video, you're always getting the first string.
Oh, yes, absolutely, Diane. Chuck's work has been seen all over. I mean, everywhere.
He is incredible. And when I go out and brag about Stages Video, I tell people, okay, I am the marketing director. I am married to Chuck, who is the star of the show here, but he is the best at what he does. He is fabulous at production, but he has a master's degree in mass communications, and this isn't anything he just learned on the job, but of course he really is an expert at what he does, and he cares about the business.
Diane, how difficult is it to prepare material? You've been doing it 20-plus years now for programming each week. Obviously, Southern Style. To share with the viewers a little bit about, particularly viewers in the PD and in southeastern North Carolina, about Southern Style. It airs on Time Warner Cable twice a day.
Yes, 10 a.m. and 7:30 p.m., Greg. And it's like Good Morning Lumberton, Good Morning Florence, Good Morning Marion. Southern Style is a show about, I like to say, it's about your friends and neighbors on TV doing what they do best. And we invite people in, and every Tuesday show I feature arts and crafts or an author or something in the arts category. Also on Tuesday, we always have animals that need to be adopted. Every Wednesday, I have a different chef. Every Thursday, I usually feature a home and garden topic of some sort. And then on Friday, medical advice from a local physician. But needless to say, in between that 30-minute segment, I also have interviews on things that are happening, whether it's the local symphony with a performance or whether it's the March of Dimes with a local fundraiser. They all are invited to come in. Folks call me. What's really neat is, Greg, in the very beginning, I used to have to hustle and call all of them. And now, after doing the show for almost 20 years, folks call me. And I can't even keep them all on. But the show does stay booked about 6 to 8 weeks out, and that's pretty natural. Now that folks know the show's there and they can get on free for great publicity, we just stay booked, and it's a wonderful thing. And I can't thank Time Warner enough, as I know you do with Fox, to give you the opportunity to do this, because all of these folks deserve publicity, and how else would they get it if it wasn't for media enabling us to do so?
Time Warner's made a huge commitment. Of course, Cox, Time Warner's predecessor on the Strand, had made an equally huge commitment. They had their own little standalone TV station, or a broadcast station of some sort, WCOX. Did they do more original programming when you first started with them?
They actually did have a lot of local programming, quite a few shows. Cox Cable was a forerunner for television in the community. When Chuck and I first moved to the Myrtle Beach area in '84, there was no television. Our parents said, "What are you doing moving to Myrtle Beach? Are there any television stations there?" We said, "No, but there will be someday." And we love Myrtle Beach, and if we have to wait on tables, we can make a living waiting on tables. We got good personalities, and so we moved here with that attitude. Cox Cable was the only place in town doing local programming, and they actually programmed to strictly their customers. And needless to say, Time Warner later bought Cox Cable, and then it became an Horry, Georgetown, and Williamsburg County show.
Well, of course, interesting. I got to jot that in. WGSE, when I bought it in '96. It's been on the air since '84, but of course it just served Horry County.
Sure.
It must not have been doing much live programming, but it had a news at one point. I know a heck of a lot of folks had gone through there, Nicole Boone and Martha Hunt, and so many. I mean, when I think of names, but of course it didn't have a lot of local programming, I guess.
And it had some, but obviously it's grown tremendously, and you're a part of that, though, Greg.
Southern Style airs 10 a.m., 7:30 p.m., Channel 5 in the city of Myrtle and in Conway.
And then anything south of the air base, 17.
Okay, great. Well, folks need to tune in. What about when you think about the transition, Diane, and moving from the PD to the Strand, and obviously the commitment of some of the lifestyle changes that happened, making that commitment to be down here with or without a job, recognizing that it was going to be a struggle. How did you figure out that you needed to find time at the same time to make yourself available to community activities, to volunteer groups? You and Chuck both have been so entrenched in your performances on stage. How do you all find time to do it all?
Well, I really believe that you do make time for what is worthwhile to you. Mm-hmm. We all get busy and we all say we're going to do this or we're going to do that, but you know what, Greg? You do make time for what's important. Mm-hmm. We have been incredibly active in the community, even when we moved here, as you said, without jobs from the very beginning, but we knew things would work out. We have faith, and we know that God had a plan, and we knew that we would not be fledging for very long. And as I said, we would have been great waiters and waitresses. However, we have become very involved in the community, and we do a lot of theater because it's a passion for us. It's a real thrill for both of us to sink our teeth into characters and become someone else for 6 to 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so we make time for theater.
We've got about 5 minutes, Diane. Can we talk real quick about the Myrtle Beach Cultural Arts Advisory Committee?
I'd love to.
You recently took over as chairperson.
Absolutely.
From Harry Love, another magnificent
Harry
servant.
Love is still our godfather of the arts, and Harry has moved on to another part of the cultural arts. Harry has decided that since the Myrtle Beach Cultural Arts Advisory Committee has pretty much come full circle with the Carousel Horse Project, if we may use a pun there. We have about a dozen horses left to sell, and of course, hopefully they will be sold in our community and remain around so the public can see them. You bought one, and I bought one at the auction. Harry has moved on to handling what is going to be called like the Rivoli Foundation. He is going to focus his attention on helping to recruit grants and fundraising efforts so that the Rivoli becomes a performing arts center for the future. Someone had to do that. Harry was the best person to do it because he's got a legal background, he's got the knowledge and the pizzazz to make it happen. I decided, we both together had a lunch and said, Diane, you need to take this committee and then move forward with it. So Harry is still there. He is in no way retired. He is going to be working hard to get the Rivoli open. Meanwhile, the Cultural Arts Advisory Council has several other things on the agenda. We're still left selling 12 more horses to fund the Rivoli. Number two, we're also very active in, after the first of the year, we're going to be pursuing an ordinance for the city of Myrtle Beach to hopefully pass an ordinance someday for art in public places. We would love to see the city of Myrtle Beach require any new construction to give a percentage back to public art at that particular building. It's not like they would be giving money to an arts coffer, so to speak, or an arts collection. They would be doing a piece of public art on their property that would not only beautify their property, but encourage people to come over and see the mosaic wall or some sort of piece of sculpture. So we're now pursuing an art in public places ordinance for the city, and we're going to go after that hard and heavy after the first of the year. And needless to say, we have a lot of other opportunities to work with the local arts organizations in a coordination effort, an arts calendar, and things like that.
Absolutely. Diane, that is a superstar idea. I love that. Will that be novel to Myrtle Beach, or is that something y'all found out about in other locations?
Well, other locations do it. Chuck and I just came back from Vancouver, and now this is a magnificent city, but they have a brochure that's filled with public art. And the brochure just tells people about 30 different locations where people can go and see public art. And this is always outside, in front of a building, that sort of thing. And we would love to see that sort of thing happen in Myrtle Beach. There's no doubt that the arts can mix with all of our neon and everything else that we do. We're proud of who we are. We're not trying to be Charleston, but we do believe that we can beautify the city of Myrtle Beach with more public art.
Diane, there's so many more things I want to talk about. We've only got a couple of minutes.
I'll come back.
I want to get into Chuck Stokes and obviously y'all's business and y'all's amazing marital life. Obviously, names like Brown Bradley that just stick out in my mind in the FBC concert series and Theater of the Republic. Is it tough to go out? Is it tough to go out to restaurants or go out to community affairs? Everyone wants to talk to you.
Do you know what? But what an honor that is. I mean, you know what? There's no doubt it's an honor when anyone wants to spend their time to talk to you. And so, you know, I mean, let's face it. I can understand if you were a really big star and you were going out. If you were Britney Spears, let's face it, it would be tough to go out. But it's really not tough going out being Diane. It's a wonderful thing when people recognize you and make a comment or they've taken time to watch your show.
What was it like performing with your husband and You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown? And you all have done so many other performances together. I wanted to highlight Mame and Annie Get Your Gun and some of the great things at the FBC Concert Series. Theater of the Public's a big part of your life.
Absolutely. Chuck and I love doing theater. Our favorite show, if you ask Chuck, he would tell you too, our favorite show together was I Do, I Do, because it was just the two of us. And it was a show that featured a husband and wife from the time they got married. We had to start at 22 years old and we had to go to 76 years old. And we actually aged on stage with our makeup and our hair, and we aged right before the audience. And it really was the biggest joy for us in theater because we won the state championship and then went on and won several awards regionally for that production. And because it was just the two of us, we grew a lot in our relationship and even in our marriage. We both said that if God wasn't good enough to let us both live to be 76, we really felt like we saw each other at 76 just by doing this show.
That's great.
But we do a lot of shows. You saw us just do excerpts from You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown at the First Presbyterian Church Concert Series, and Greg just thought that was the funniest thing. The most fun about that show was that Chuck was Charlie Brown and I was Lucy, and I got to tell him he was stupid, self-centered, and moody, and I got a chance to cut him down and just really... And it really pained me because we don't argue like that, but Lucy was always chewing Charlie Brown out. And so it was just the most perfect thing to be able to...
Diane, your facial contortions were amazing. I said to Chuck, does Diane practice those in front of a mirror? He said, heck no. She is amazing.
It's a rubber face.
Yeah.
It's a rubber face. And so to being Lucy and walking around with a pout on my face during the whole show was quite a challenge, but it was really fun to be a kid again and do this and, of course, play off of Charlie Brown. Wonderful. Absolutely. And Chuck's such a consummate actor that was he not the best Charlie Brown?
He was incredible.
So, you know, I wish you could have seen the whole show, but excerpts were fun.
And this is exact. She got it right on the head. Excerpts are fun. You're only seeing a slice of Diane DeVaughn Stokes. You got to catch her, whether it's on Southern Style on Time Warner Cable or on stage at the Florence Little Theater or the Theater of the Republic or the FBC Concert Series. What a special, special woman. Diane, thanks so much for being with us.
Gosh, Greg, thank you so much.
morning.
I'm honored to be invited back, and I'll come back anytime.
Absolutely.
Thank you, dear.
Great. Thank you. Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. Our true Carolina person of the week, a PD native who now calls the Grand Strand home, Diane DeVaughn Stokes. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.